Did you know that there are some people who, for your own good and for their own good, you absolutely should not help in your old age? In this story, we will see the 7 types of people you should never help. And if you stick around until the end, you will discover a secret to living a peaceful and fulfilling old age, a secret that Buddhist monks have known for centuries. But before continuing, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to stay updated when we publish new content for your spiritual growth. The morning sun was timidly filtering through the branches of the cherry blossoms, painting plays of light and shadow on the gravel path that led to the Engaku-ji temple. A motley group of people, united by the weight of their worries and the search for guidance, were slowly approaching the home of the old monk Ryokan, renowned throughout the region for his wisdom, his deep understanding of human nature, and his ability to illuminate even the darkest corners of the soul. Ryokan, a man whose age seemed to have crystallized in an indefinite time, with eyes as kind and deep as a mountain lake and an enigmatic smile that concealed infinite wisdom, was waiting for them sitting cross-legged on a zafu cushion in the temple garden. Her slender figure, wrapped in a simple linen tunic, exuded a contagious serenity, an aura of peace that seemed to pervade the entire room, calming hearts and preparing minds to listen. When the visitors had settled in front of him, forming a respectful semicircle, Ryokan began to speak in a calm, deep voice, like the murmur of a mountain stream flowing between rocks. "You have come here seeking answers," he said, "plagued by doubts and tormented by relationships that drain you instead of nourishing you. You carry the weight of bonds that, instead of supporting you, oppress you. You ask me which people you should not help, even if they are related to you by ties of affection, blood, or friendship." A murmur of agreement rose from the group. A woman, her face lined with deep wrinkles that told stories of toil and worry, spoke up. "Venerable monk," she said in a trembling voice, "I have dedicated my life to helping others, especially my family. I have sacrificed my needs, my desires, for the good of my loved ones. But now, in my old age, I feel empty, used, as if my existence has no value other than that of a mere instrument for the happiness of others. How can I distinguish between those who deserve my help and those who do not?" Ryokan nodded in understanding, his eyes reflecting the sunlight like mirrors of water. "Life is an ever-changing river," he said, "and people, like the waves that flow through it, are constantly changing, transforming, sometimes in ways we cannot understand. Helping is a noble act, an expression of compassion and love, but it must be guided by wisdom, not obligation, guilt, or fear of losing someone's affection. There are 7 types of people whom, especially in your old age, you should avoid helping for their sake and your own, because unconditional help, in these cases, turns into a poison that prevents growth and perpetuates suffering." A careful silence fell over the garden. The sun had risen, illuminating Ryokan's serene face and the trembling leaves of the cherry trees. Imagine the one who clings to you like ivy to a centuries-old wall, the eternal dependent. This person has made dependence his way of life, intertwining his existence with yours in a suffocating embrace. He depends on you for everything, for the most important decisions as well as for daily trivialities. He has given up on developing his own autonomy, his own ability to judge, his own inner strength. He constantly complains about his fate, but does nothing to change it, expecting you to solve all his problems, to smooth the way for him, to relieve him of all responsibility. Day after day he complains, asks, demands, without ever trying to change his situation, expecting you to solve his problems eternally. He does not learn from his falls because he knows that you will always be there to pick him up, to heal his wounds, to show him the way. But by doing so, you do not allow him to learn to grow, to become a complete and independent individual. Every time you help him, you take away an opportunity for growth, you prevent him from developing the resilience needed to face the storms of life. Helping her means perpetuating her weakness, preventing her from blossoming into her full independence, condemning her to perpetual immaturity. Let her face the consequences of her choices, even if painful, because only in this way will she find the strength to grow, to walk on her own 2 feet, to become the architect of her own destiny. You may think you are doing them good, but in reality you are creating immature adults, incapable of facing the challenges of life. Remember, a tree grows strong and sturdy only if it learns to resist the wind, not if it is constantly repaired. A middle-aged man with a tired look and a look of deep sadness in his eyes nodded bitterly. "I think I recognize my son in this description," he confessed in a thin voice. "I have always tried to protect him from everything, to smooth his path in every way, to spare him any suffering. I have worked hard to be able to offer him everything that I did not have, but now I realize that perhaps I have done him more harm than good. He has never learned to fend for himself, to make independent decisions, to tolerate frustration. He depends on me for everything, and I feel trapped in a role that suffocates me." And then, Ryokan continued, his voice weaving a web of wisdom in the attentive silence of the garden, "There is one who spins an invisible web of emotions, the emotional manipulator. This person is a skilled puppeteer of other people's feelings, a master in the art of psychological manipulation. He uses guilt as a weapon, pity as a shield, fear as a noose to get what he wants from you. He holds you hostage to his existential traumas, his cleverly orchestrated crisis, draining you of energy and serenity. He knows which buttons to press to make you feel guilty, to make you believe that he can't do it without you, that you are his only lifeline, manipulating your emotions at will, making you feel responsible for his happiness, his well-being, even his survival. He makes you believe that you are indispensable, that you are the only one who can understand him, help him, save him. But in reality, this person is not looking for your help, but your control, your submission. He feeds on your energy, your attention, your time. Learn to recognize his emotional games, his subtle manipulations, his veiled requests for emotional blackmail, and to establish healthy, insurmountable boundaries. Remember that your inner peace, your serenity, are not negotiable. They are not a commodity. Don't let anyone trample on them." A young woman, her eyes shining with tears that she had barely held back, came forward. "Venerable monk," she said, her voice breaking with emotion, "your words describe my mother perfectly. She makes me feel guilty for every decision I make, for every choice that does not reflect her expectations. She makes me believe that I am an ungrateful, selfish daughter if I do not comply with her every wish, if I dare to stray from the path she has traced for me. I feel suffocated, trapped in an invisible grip." Listen carefully. Ryokan continued, his voice echoing from times long past, for there is also the one who wallows in his complaints like a silkworm in its silk, the chronic complainer. This person sees the world through a veil of perpetual negativity, of cosmic pessimism. Every problem, no matter how small, becomes an insurmountable tragedy, every difficulty an unforgivable injustice, every setback a conspiracy against him. He complains about everything and everyone, the weather, the government, his neighbors, his bad luck, without ever proposing a solution, without ever seeing the bright side of things, without ever taking responsibility for his actions. He almost seems to enjoy complaining, taking a perverse pleasure in self-pity, in drawing attention to his own misfortunes, real or imagined. Every conversation with him turns into a river of complaints, an endless list of woes, a personal apocalypse. Helping him is like pouring water into a bottomless well. His dissatisfaction will never be filled, his thirst for negativity never quenched. Give him a compassionate ear if you want, but do not let yourself be dragged into his abyss of pessimism. Do not allow his negativity to infect your vision of the world. Remember that your energy is precious, a good to be jealously guarded. Reserve it for those who are willing to grasp the light, who can appreciate the beauty of the world, who, despite difficulties, try to build something positive. An elderly gentleman, sitting apart with a look of deep resignation painted on his face, shook his head. "I have a friend like that," he confessed with a sigh. "Every time I meet him, I end up feeling depressed, empty, infected by his pessimism. And yet, I feel sorry for him. I feel obliged to listen to him, to try to cheer him up." Be careful, Ryokan warned, because similar to the chronic complainer, but with a much more insidious nuance, is the one who does not limit himself to complaining, but actively tries to suck your vital energy like a spider with its prey, the energy vampire. This person feeds on your attention, your time, your emotional resources, leaving you exhausted, unmotivated, drained of strength. He calls you continuously at any time of the day or night to tell you his problems, to vent his frustrations, to ask for advice that he then never follows, just for the pleasure of feeling at the center of attention, of having someone hanging on his every word. He doesn't really care about you, how you are, what you do. You are just an audience for his personal drama, a reservoir of energy from which he can draw with both hands. He uses you like a bottomless pit, leaving you empty, unmotivated, and unable to take care of your own needs. Learn to protect yourself from these emotional vampires, to recognize the warning signs, to say no to their incessant demands. Surround yourself with people who instead nourish you, who inspire you, who enrich you with their presence, and not with parasites who attach themselves like leeches, stealing the lifeblood from you. A determined-looking career woman nodded with conviction, a glint of awareness in her eyes. "I know this type of person all too well," she said firmly. "I had a colleague who absorbed me completely, calling me constantly, even after hours, to discuss work, but in reality, he was just looking for attention. He left me without energy for my work, for my family, for myself. I had to learn to set boundaries, to say no, to protect my time and energy." And what about the one who never acknowledges the value of your help, the perpetual ungrateful? Ryokan continued, his voice growing slightly stern, like that of a father admonishing a son. "This person takes your support for granted, considers your efforts as a duty, never expressing a shred of gratitude, never reciprocating in any way, not even with a simple thank you. You could do anything for him, move mountains, cross oceans, he would never appreciate it. Instead, he would always find something to fault, a flaw to point out, a reason to complain, belittling your efforts and making you feel guilty if you don't do enough, if you don't sacrifice yourself completely to satisfy his every whim. Helping this person is an act that debases you, that impoverishes you internally, and does not bring any benefit to the one who receives it, because ingratitude is arid soil where nothing good can germinate. Remember that gratitude is the nourishment of the soul, both for the one who gives it and for the one who receives it. It is the glue that holds people together, that creates deep and meaningful bonds. Offer your help to those who know how to appreciate it, to those who know how to recognize the value of your time, your commitment, your affection. Do not waste your energy with those who consider everything as an acquired right, with those who do not know how to say thank you." A young man with a look of bitter disappointment in his eyes spoke up. "I helped a friend in a moment of great difficulty," he said in a broken voice. "I lent him money, I hosted him in my home, I dedicated time and energy to helping him get back on his feet. When he finally found a job, he disappeared from my life without saying a word, without even thanking me, as if everything I had done for him had been obvious, taken for granted." And do not forget the one who transforms every event into a drama worthy of a Greek tragedy. The dramatizer, the monk, continued, in a tone that betrayed a profound knowledge of the infinite facets of the human soul. This person lives in a constant state of agitation, of emotional storm, and tries in every way to involve those around him in his vortex of negative emotions, anxieties, fears, often magnified or even invented. Every small problem becomes an imminent catastrophe, every discussion a world war, every setback a conspiracy plotted behind his back. He lives on this, he feeds on these theatrical emotions, exaggerated and often invented from scratch, like an actor playing a part on the stage of life. He has a constant, desperate need for attention, for confirmation, to feel at the center of the world, even at the cost of creating chaos and discomfort around him. Helping him means feeding his need for drama, chaos, attention. It means becoming an involuntary accomplice in his theater of the absurd. Offer him your calm, your rationality, but don't let yourself be overwhelmed by his melodrama. Don't allow him to transform your life into a low-grade soap opera. A woman, looking visibly exhausted and worn out, raised her hand, as if asking for help. "My sister is exactly like that," she confessed with a sigh. "Every phone call is a torrent of problems, complaints, dramas, tragedies waiting to happen. She tells me about non-existent fights, imaginary illnesses, plots against her. I always feel compelled to help her, to listen to her, to console her, but I end up feeling overwhelmed, stressed, sucked into a vortex of negativity that takes my breath away." Finally, Ryokan concluded in a tone of deep, unchanging wisdom, and perhaps most importantly of all, there is the one who, deep down in his being, does not want to be helped at all, the one who does not want to be helped. This person may even ask for your help with words, beg you to intervene, to save him from his misery, but his actions, his behavior, demonstrate unequivocally the opposite. He refuses to change, to take responsibility for his life, to make the slightest effort to improve his situation, preferring to remain in his comfort zone, however dysfunctional, painful, and self-destructive it may be. He keeps repeating the same mistakes, complaining about the same things, banging his head against the same wall without ever doing anything concrete to change course. He asks for help, but then refuses every piece of advice, every proposal, every possible solution, as if he were allergic to change, to growth, to happiness. He wallows in his self-pity, finding a perverse satisfaction in the role of victim, of misunderstood martyr. Helping him is a vain undertaking, a useless waste of energy, an obstacle to his path of growth, because true growth can only happen from within, only when you decide to take the reins of your life. It's like trying to fill a leaky bucket. No matter how much water you pour in, it will continue to empty. Sometimes the greatest act of love, of compassion, is to let someone hit rock bottom, to experience the consequences of their choices, because only then, perhaps, will they find the strength, the motivation, the desperation needed to get back up, to change, to finally take the road to recovery. You cannot save them against their will. You can only offer them a hand, but it is up to them to grab it and find the strength to pull themselves out of the quagmire they have gotten themselves into. A deep and thoughtful silence, full of contrasting emotions, enveloped the temple garden. The monk's words had hit the mark, resonating with the irrefutable truth of the experiences lived by each person present. Each of the visitors could recognize, in Rilke's descriptions, one or more people who had crossed their path, leaving an indelible, often painful, mark on their lives. After a long moment of silence, in which thoughts and emotions swirled in the minds of those present like dry leaves in an autumn vortex, Rilke spoke again, his voice resonating like a balm on wounded souls. Remember, helping others does not mean canceling yourself, sacrificing your own happiness, your own well-being, on the altar of the needs of others, especially in your old age, when time and energy become even more precious assets. It is essential to learn to discern, to choose wisely and consciously to whom to give your time, your support, your affection. It's not about selfishness, but about self-preservation, about respect for yourself. Cultivate love for yourself, learn to say no when necessary, establish healthy, insurmountable boundaries, and surround yourself with people who enrich you, who inspire you, who support you, who walk alongside you with gratitude, respect, and mutual love. The sun was now high in the sky, bathing the garden in a golden light, warm and enveloping. The visitors rose slowly, with an expression of renewed awareness, of deep understanding, painted on their faces. Rilke's words had sown in them a seed of wisdom, a new perspective on human relationships, on the art of helping with discernment, on the importance of loving oneself before being able to love others in an authentic and selfless way. And just as the group prepared to leave the temple, Rilke called them to him one last time and with an enigmatic smile whispered, "I have told you about the 7 types of people you should not help, but I have not yet